Tesla's Cybertruck, awesome or awful? This is Tech First Draft, tech news before it's news. My name is John Kutsier. I write for Forbes. I consult with some tech companies. If you're on live social right now, awesome. You're riding along on an interview for a story. If you're hearing this on the podcast afterwards, welcome also. So if you want to talk about cars and design, and maybe especially Cybertruck, you should talk to someone who's actually a designer, right? Especially in the automotive industry. That seems to make sense. So our guest today is the Chief Innovation Officer of Ronin X Design. He's been a senior consultant with Nissan on design, autonomous vehicles, and heads-up displays. He's a senior UI UX designer he was also a senior UI UX designer with BMW. And currently, he's developing next generation experiences with Mercedes. He's also consulted with multiple companies, including Nike, Sony, HBO, and he's won the Key Art Award for his Iron Man 3 and Thor designs. That is pretty freaking cool. So I would like to welcome Fede Ponce. Welcome.
Hi, John. Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so happy to have you. And you are a very patient man. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I had huge issues getting you on the audio for this, and it was all my fault, and you didn't blow up at me. You didn't freak out at me. So you're wonderful.
No problem. But it's still, the fact remains, my comment on the chat, PC is a little problematic.
It could be the case. He's using a PC. I'm using a Mac right now. Let's jump right into it. Sure. Cybertruck. I wrote an article for Forbes and I said, hey, I hate it. I'm sorry, I hate the design. Talk to me. Cybertruck, love it or hate it?
I absolutely love it. It is such a bold design. Now think about it this way, John. Right now, if you were to remove the badges or logos of most cars in the street, would you're knowledgeable guys, you'd probably recognize them, but most people won't, right? So if you look at Cybertruck, just from a pure branding perspective, I'll get into design later, but pure branding, you will see a Cybertruck and you know it's Tesla automatically. You don't need to see a badge. You don't need to see anything else, right? So that's a very bold statement. Now, in terms of the actual design, right? Let's break it down. Let's break it down into exterior and interior. And by the way, did you see the announcement today on the matte black? You can't tell me that matte black doesn't look badass.
It's pretty amazing. I agree.
So a couple of things, right? So this is like, their first presentation. So one thing to understand about Tesla is that it's probably V1, right? So they'll probably take on some advice. They'll take on a little bit of the, good feedback that they hear, and they'll probably bring that back to the production model. And I'm sure that the production model will have, there will be a little bit of a translation, there will be some translation issues. And so that being said, let's talk about the exterior for a second. So one of the key things that's super interesting to me, and this is something that I'd love to ask you, is Tesla has always elicited some very strong responses. Love it or hate it. And I know a lot of people that are, sort of milquetoast about it. So what's interesting to me, though, is that having worked with all these very, very, very good OEMs, and by the way, these companies, they employ some of the best, most talented people. But one thing I'll tell you as an insider is when you're in the meetings, when you're inside, what comes up? Tesla comes up, right? And it's interesting because the design process, from what I know, disclaimer, I've never worked at Tesla. I know a few designers from there, but I've never been in the room. But from the other companies, the design process is very different. It's a little bit of an isolated bubble. And the design decisions sometimes, if not most of the times, get watered down or tweaked to serve very different departments, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the companies live to satisfy the client. So that's the thing. Now, when enter Cybertruck, right? It's bold. It's bold. It's daring. They're not trying to satisfy, a specific, set of people that they brought in for interview. I mean, this is a designer stream. They came in and they did what they wanted. They had a vision, and there's obviously some really smart people in the room. Now, it's not if you're not a designer, you don't have a responsibility to know that there's a history to this exercise, right? So if you look at the work and the art of Rem Koolhaas and Joy Reuter, I'm butchering his name, you'll see that these are very beautiful art pieces that have a philosophy, right? And the philosophy is you have to take a shape and reduce it to its most pure form. And how do you reduce it to its most pure form and still have it remain functional and still have it, somewhat aesthetic? So somewhat aesthetic. So it's a huge endeavor. Minimalism is one of the hardest things to pull through. And in my view, they did it right with the Tesla exterior. Now, if you want to look at it from a functionality point of view, there's some really good points to be made. So no rust, so pretty heavy duty stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody saw the hammer thing. It's pretty cool. Obviously it's a show thing, but if you think about it being on a construction site, or think about it being on a rugged terrain, it's a big deal. Now, in terms of an ecosystem, this is where I'm getting really excited now. You look at the ATV. If you saw the ATV, you saw the camper, and you start seeing the ecosystem around it and the design language. You can see, number one, a design language that it propagates properly across different vehicles. And you see a design language that works as a cohesive ecosystem. And that's amazing. And that, to me, in terms of appeal and in terms of marketing and in terms of just the value of the product, opens up itself to different markets. So I could completely see, if somebody that loves camping getting that car. I can see somebody that loves extreme sports. If you're going to go in like a 4-wheel drive rugged terrain to surf in some area, I can totally see that car. So I love it. I love it. Exterior, I love it. For the interior, very minimal. Again, I don't know what stage that interior is. Very functional, very clean. And then again, sort of the same thing happens. I look at what Ford did with the Mustang with the Mach-E release, and you look at that interior, and you look at that dashboard. That's clearly inspired by Tesla. Right. And so what I see is that what Tesla does is they continue to push the envelope, and they push it as far as possible. And then maybe, they might bring it back a little bit, but guess what? Now they set the standard. And I can almost guarantee you that's going to be the case for the Cybertruck. Maybe, the next generation of trucks won't be as close to that, but they'll experiment closer with sharper edges, and they'll reduce a little bit more of the volumes and the curves. And they'll start bringing in some of those really sharp lines to the design language. That's what I think, seeing history, what will eventually happen.
Amazing.
The UI looks incredible, very minimal, very black and white. Again, there might be some updates, but from a designer's point of view, like that's a dream. That's a UI dream. White lines and text, as simple as it gets.
Excellent. Did you order one?
I did put an order for one. So we'll see.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. When is your expected delivery date? Do you know that yet?
I think, let me check. I think it's 2021 or 2022. 2021, I think. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit. You're talking about design language. You're talking about the exterior, and I remember I travel quite a bit as you, and I remember going to Houston for the first time. This is going somewhere, so bear with me.
Sure.
Going to Houston for the first time, and I saw the buildings, and thought, wow, this is brutalist architecture. This is like not human, right? and as you look at the Cybertruck, and people are saying it's built for a post-apocalyptic future. It's brutal. It's militaristic or something like that. I don't know which of those I agree with or disagree with. What do you see? What do you see emotionally when you see Cybertruck?
I see absolute functionality. I do agree it's a little bit more on the militaristic side of things. But I also want to remind people that, remember Hummer? Remember when Hummers were huge? And
Yes.
I very clearly remember, because I never liked them, that the original reaction to them was that people were asking, why are these military vehicles driving on the street, right? And then,
Hmm.
wow, these are cool. Wow, these are spacious. And then, of course, it had its decrease in that, but that curve, that impact is very similar, so it's not unseen that a very aggressive vehicle can enter the mainstream like that. I think the same case could be said for the Mercedes Safari. It's sort of I think it's like the C class. I don't remember top of my head, but very boxy, very square, very aggressive, right? And then
Hmm.
if you drive down some of the luxury areas here in Los Angeles, it's a very famous, it's a very, very used car. So again, going back to your point, is that these vehicles that seem to be part of another system can enter the mainstream. It just takes a little bit for that initial emotional reaction to kind of pass.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I also think, look, and I said it in the article that I wrote, where I said it was ugly as sin. But sorry, but we live in an era where it does not need to appeal to 100% of people. In fact, if it appeals to 100% of people, it's probably not going to be successful. It's probably too average, too mainstream. It only needs to appeal to, what is it, 5% of people, 10% of people, 3% of people, who knows, any particular product in the market. And those people, guess what, are probably pretty passionate about it and willing to lay out 50K, 60K, 70K, whatever it might be, to have that object. So is that something of what you think's happening here as well?
Absolutely. I think you nailed it. I think you absolutely nailed it. I think the era of mass shapes and forms is completely, and not just in automotive. You look at sneakers, you see, customization is a big deal. And so the next biggest thing, the closer to customization you can get in the automaking space, is having these really bold designs that, like you said, absolutely don't appeal to anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
you can see that in emerging startups that will be huge, that are 3D printing exterior carcasses. And I'm telling you, man, the future looks really bright. You'll be able to go
Yes.
design your own exterior, within some parameters, and have it 3D printed. So you're
Mm-hmm.
absolutely
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And talk a little bit about the intense reactions that we've seen. I had one. Obviously, you had one. You said, "I want it. Give it to me." And others are. I guess that's just design, right? When you have something that is clearly new, you're going to have violently opposing reactions.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit hard to parse. To be honest with you, I wrote a small piece about it. I have obviously friends. Interestingly enough, and I won't say from which brands, but a lot of my designer friends and a lot of friends that are, top designers, even some VPs. Some of them hate it, some of them love it. Absolutely, there's no in between. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but once you go into the mainstream and try to sort of get the temperature, it's very difficult to parse, because a lot of people obviously don't like the brand, and the brand does have some serious enemies, and that's like a serious conversation. There's a lot of blogs and tech writers and people that are influenced by Tesla enemies, and that's the truth. So it's really difficult to parse that origin of that emotion.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It was interesting. I don't know if you saw it. I tweeted it out this morning. It was on Easy, an electric vehicle website, and a Toyota exec they had brought a bunch of journalists together and said, "We do not see demand for electric vehicles." And I was just like, "Have you seen the pre-orders for Cybertruck?
Yeah.
Does Tesla mean something to you? Have you seen that every other automotive manufacturer in the world is bringing out an electric vehicle? The electric Mini is coming out next year. I'm looking at that one, by the way."
Yeah, no, that looks cool. I'll tell you a really funny anecdote. So Sunday I went out for breakfast with a bunch of designers. Actually, we try to like keep in touch and have we geek out. But we were all sitting at that cafe, and everybody's quiet, right? Everybody's quiet. We're just waiting for everybody to get there. Nobody's saying anything. And then one of our friends, finally, the last one to come in, gets in, and then he just goes, "Cybertruck, let's get it out." Let's talk it out and then move on.
And what was the overall reaction?
It's super mixed. Half of them hated it. I think half of them thought it was just way too far. They saw the intention, but design-wise, it just went way too far. And then some of them, again, praised them because it was bold and very, very different. So no in-betweens, which is kind of a sign of the times, right? Very polarizing opinions, very much, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. And so it is an interesting design, but also in terms of functionality, which you mentioned, right? This cold rolled steel, super strong, right? Amazing. I don't believe you don't. It will come unpainted in some models as well, correct?
Correct.
Have we ever seen that before in a vehicle?
No, and like, exactly. So it's, I think the alloy is anti-rust, and
Yes.
so I mean, those things are a big push. And I think in terms of manufacturing, the way it's designed, the way it's built, and because it's not painted, it will significantly reduce manufacturing costs. So
I think there's a lot of talk about how Cybertruck was designed as well to be automatable in terms of in terms of being built. So that's super interesting. I've also looked at the interior, which I thought was interesting. You talked about that, and I looked at the steering wheel, which is not really a steering wheel. I mean, it's not a circle. It's more like a yoke, almost like a plane yoke. I believe the Tesla sports car, the Roadster, had something similar, and so we see that actually in race cars as well. I wondered a little bit if that was kind of, we're not giving you a full steering wheel because, we're self-driving is coming pretty soon. I wondered if that was entering the conversation there.
Well, yeah, and before I jump in, one important point that I want to ask you and I want to ask the audience is, there's a very big difference between seeing the car at the show and then actually see it moving on the road. And when you see it moving, it's something else, man. It's a little scary in a good way.
So have you seen it in person then?
Not in person, but I've just seen it videos of it.
Okay. Okay. Yes, the videos are impressive. I think that we underestimate the size as well. And sorry, go ahead. No, good.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you so much for spending this time. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to consider that Tesla is the only, and I have no affiliation to them, but it's very important to point out that it's the only car company that has built an intelligent ecosystem. And the body that you see on the Cybertruck comes directly from research done from SpaceX. So
Yes.
the fact that they're able to tap into talent from SpaceX, Starlink, probably in the future Neuralink, and that this is a full ecosystem, it is absolutely going to bring some really good innovation into the automotive space for sure.
I think that's a really, really big deal that you're bringing up there, and I should have gone into that more, actually. The only car that has an ecosystem. I mean, we know about superchargers, right? We know about self-driving capability. You mentioned the add-ons to the Cybertruck platform in terms of there's sort of a tent thing. There's in one of the photos, there's like a barbecue or like a little outdoor kitchen type scenario, right? And building that ecosystem around it, the software. Nobody else can do software like Tesla can do it in the automotive world because the company has software DNA. Right?
Right.
That is super interesting to me as well. But car as ecosystem, we know what won in the mobile wars, and ecosystem won, right? For the two winners in the mobile wars. Be interested to see if that happens in automotive as well.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if his next step would be some sort of printable housing company, everything around building stuff for Mars.
Wow. Fede, this has been wonderful. I know you're heading out on an airplane in like literally 90 minutes. So thank you so much. I hope you don't have a long trip to get there. And for everybody else who joined us on the live stream or on the podcast, thank you for joining us in Tech First Draft. Whatever platform you're on, please like, subscribe, share, comment. If you're on the podcast and you love this, please rate it and review it. Thank you again, Fede. And until next time, this is John Kutz here with Tech First Draft.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Fede.
Bye.